Hi, everyone. This is the second episode of the Dynasty Boardroom podcast. This is the first episode that we've actually had a name. So this is a big step in the right direction for us. And I think we have a little better grasp on what we actually need to do here to make it make sense and work and have it be useful to everyone that's listening or watching. Um, so I'm John German, one of the co-hosts of the show, and I'll let my other co-hosts introduce themselves. Thor?
My name is Thor Akerley. I am a dynasty and fantasy football aficionado. We all play. Should also say that we all play in a dynasty league together, a contract dynasty league, which I'm sure we'll touch on, at some point in the future. And of course, I was an analyst and ex-admin over at fantasyteamadvice.com, and I've been in the fantasy business for 10 plus years.
All right. I'm John Fosbury. I'm also in this Dynasty League. I am the only repeat winner in the Dynasty League we're all in together. And yeah, really into fantasy football and happy to be here. I am a football coach in real life too. So I got that going for me.
In that same league they're talking about, I'm the only one of the group that has not actually won a league. So it will happen. I have a plethora of first round picks over the next couple of years. So the rebuild is happening and we will I'm hoping to have it take shape quickly. So we'll do a little recap on what we did on our last show, and I'll also preface it by saying we kind of just run through the draft in real time. So we didn't stop between episodes and we just kind of kept going. So there's been a lot of stuff that's happened since we last recorded that isn't quite reflected in the draft. And you'll see a few of them very, very quickly of things that have happened recently that were not reflected in this draft. But yeah, so Thor, if you want to run through your teams and give a quick, like, thought on where you think that team is and what you think it needs to do to get to where you want it to be a good dynasty team.
Yeah, absolutely. Team Thor won. I love the start here with McCaffrey. I think I kind of regret going Michael Thomas, Edwards-Helaire there. I felt like I maybe should have gone Zeke or Mixon, but with Edwards-Helaire age and the draft capital, I'm still confident that he'll end up returning value. And Michael Thomas, I don't know. I mean, it kind of sucks with Breeze retiring now. I probably would have changed the pick, but he was fine with Taysom. I don't think he's a round two type dynasty ADP player anymore at age 28. I'd rather have a couple of guys that went after him. But I still think that team is going to be really competitive this year, especially with Najee Harris likely to land a full-time job with Aaron Jones heading back to Green Bay. I think that's great for that team. Chase, I'm as confident as any wide receiver in recent years to come out that he'll be a stud. So for this team, I'm looking for a little more depth at receiver, some veterans to kind of buoy, maybe a slow start from Chase. And then, given that I'm likely to be competitive, with McCaffrey, Thomas, Hilaire, I'd like to get a solid quarterback and a viable tight end to compete in year one. And that's generally my strategy. I want to be competitive early and try to win the league as many times as I can. Team two, similar. I was able to get Jonathan Taylor, who is pretty much a consensus top 5 pick now. Kelsey, I think some of my co podcasters didn't love the pick there. He's getting older. The age cliff is sneaking up on him. We've seen other tight ends produce out, past their 30s, but I think that's getting a little overblown. Mahomes is clearly very reliant on him, and he just came off one of the best years a tight end's ever had, and he was the clear runaway tight end one. So with that, I went after him. Went another running back who should have a strong year. The Cincinnati offensive line can't get much worse. With Burrow healthy, I think that offense should take another step forward. And then I had to get some receiver help there with Ayuk and Juju. Neither super sexy. The team lacks a wide receiver one, but I'm fine with that as my wide receiver 1 and 2s to start. So I'll look for more help at wide receiver, obviously, on that team. But definitely built to compete early as well. And then 3, I just loaded up on the sexy young wide receivers. the Metcalf pick scares me a little now with Russ potentially leaving Seattle, but I think that's getting a little overblown. I don't think he ends up leaving, but really happy with CD, with Dak locked in long term. Love the Eckler pick there. I feel like that was a really strong value to get a running back to build around my young wide receiver core. Galladay, kind of stinks he didn't stay in Detroit, but I think I could have gone somewhere else with Galladay there, but I think he'll end up somewhere where he gets paid a good amount of money and is a clear wide receiver 1. So he should have good opportunity, at least the first few years in his new place. And then Claypool, obviously, really good year 1, and Ben sticking around at least for another year. Then 4, I wanted to compete again here, but I love Justin Jefferson, of course, and the age and production is just amazing. Henry felt like he was a little bit above the Dobbins, Akers, Sanders tier for me, just with him locked up for another couple years in Tennessee. So I went there. And then Moore, Evans, felt like those were, borderline wide receiver 1s in the 3rd and 4th rounds, both still, Moore in the early portion of his prime, Evans in the later portion of his, still with Brady for probably another couple years. And then finished it off with Kyle Pitts in round 5. Hopefully he goes to a team that will use him right away. I know we've seen a lot of high pedigree tight ends in recent years flame out or just not do well, even first round picks. So it's a little concerning, but the hype and talent around Pitts is probably a little bit unparalleled to some of these other guys like Njoku, OJ Howard, who were really good prospects in their own right, but not quite on the level of Pitts. So I'm going to look to probably add another tight end, just in case he doesn't work out, just because this team is built to win now with Henry. And, I'd like to have some more a veteran presence there to produce right away. And then I'd like to obviously add some running back help with Henry.
Don't talk bad about David Njoku. He's definitely he's poised for a breakout this year. Just got to see him in a different team.
Post hype.
Yep.
Breakout.
I'm holding on hope. I've had him in that league for his entire career, and he's going to be a part of that team until he is no longer in the league. Foz, you got any, you want to give us a breakdown and thoughts on your teams and where you want to go with them?
So Foz 1, I love getting Saquon at 102. I think I said in the last one, he was my number 1 overall player in Dynasty Startups right now. It's just like supremely talented, like probably the most talented running backs to come out of college since Adrian Peterson. So anytime you can get value like that, and the Giants should be ascending, even though they cut one of their prime offensive linemen this week. After that, it's kind of like it's honestly kind of a nightmare. I don't mind having Kittle as the best tight end in football at that pick there. But like just seeing that like Ezekiel Elliott and Joe Mixon go after I drafted Terry McLaurin is looking like mighty unfortunate right now. And then I don't mind McLaurin. I believe in him. I think he'll be fine. And, we've seen him produce with his floor. Like, I think his first 2 years are his floor for his career. So I think he can only go up, but, just missing out on Ezekiel Elliott and Joe Mixon, especially after the Dak news where he's coming back to the Cowboys. Just Elliott's prime for just another elite season, as long as Dak and Zeke are healthy. Moving over to Foz 2, really like this team. Really like this team moving forward. Kamara obviously doesn't have a quarterback right now. But, with Breeze retiring a couple hours before we recorded, but still love him as a, pass catching monster to get 80 to 100 catches in the coming years. Miles Sanders, another guy, believe in supremely, especially with Jalen Hurts commanding the Eagles offense. Freezing linebackers with his running ability. And then, going receivers there with Higgins and Beckham back-to-back. I feel like Beckham's like fantastic value in round 4. Still relatively young, still elite athlete, and on another offense and team that's ascending. James Robinson is the one pick. I gotta hope things break my way and he'll continue to produce. Foz 3, this is just like total balance of upside and floor with Mahomes and Hill correlation, and then getting Dobbins in that heavy offense who like extremely efficient last year in his rookie season, still super young, and then played it like extremely floor heavy with Montgomery and Woods, who actually I think Woods will perform like in one of his higher end seasons this year with Stafford taking or probably, probably my favorite team so far up to this point through round 5, just with that Chubb Swift at the turn there. Just a devastating duo who are both going to be NFL running backs, producing at the top of fantasy leagues for, the next 3 to 4 years. And then I secured that position with the Browns running back with Hunt right there because Hunt signed that extension. So even if Chubb moves on after this year, I still have exposure to that Browns run heavy scheme. Cooper with Dak, with that Dak news, looks even better at the back end of the 3rd round there. And Chark, I'm hoping, can get some Urban Meyer magic.
Yeah, all good points. So I'll jump into my team. So John 1 started Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Zeke, followed it up with Cortland Sutton and Deontay Johnson. So I'm really a big fan of starting with those 3 running backs, especially with the news today that Aaron Jones has been extended and that Dak, not that Dak wasn't today, but with Dak there, Zeke is poised for success for years to come. So I have 3 really solid running backs on that team and some high upside wide receivers. So with Juju most likely gone from Pittsburgh, Deontay should step up. Maybe he'll be able to step up better than Juju could have or should have, but we'll see. We'll see on that one. And Cortland Sutton got injured, so who knows? I think he's the best, maybe not the best wide receiver on that team, but 1A, 1B with Judy. So really big fan of that team. John 2 started Devontae Adams, Cam Akers, Chris Godwin, Darren Waller, and then Travis Etienne. This team, I felt like I wanted to make it a compete now team. And so that's why I went with Devontae Adams. Cam Akers adds some youth to it. Godwin getting the franchise tag or he got the tag, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Godwin did. Yep.
So Godwin got the tag to stay with Tampa. So I'm a big fan of that. That means Brady wanted him to be there. So him getting the tag is good news for him. Means that Brady wants him to be a big part of that offense next year. Darren Waller, huge part of that offense and will be again. Travis Etienne, there's a lot of good landing spots. So as long as he gets one of those, this team is going to be competing immediately. I think I'm going to try and keep that going. I just want to keep in that mindset of competing with that team. John 3, this is my favorite team that I put together through 5 rounds. Starting with AJ Brown and Calvin Ridley, 2 solid, or better than solid, really good young wide receivers that are only going to continue to get better as things like evolve for their teams. Josh Jacobs and Javonte Williams. Jacobs is a solid RB1. Williams, I think he could be, depending where he goes. Maybe not in year 1, but in the future. Keenan Allen as my wide receiver 3. Really happy with that. So I think I'm going to just continue on with this team, trying to stay young, but also have those high upside players. I'll definitely be adding a tight end and a quarterback over the next 5 rounds. That's if it falls right, but I feel like that's probably the way to go. John 4, Stephon Diggs, D-Hop at the turn. That feels great. 2 solid first year with the new team. Both had great years. Going to continue to have it. They have their young quarterbacks that are going to be with them for the rest of their career, most likely. Allen Robinson, great wide receiver 3. We'll see what happens there for the QB situation, but Allen Robinson is QB proof, it seems. Antonio Gibson as the only RB through 5 rounds is a little risky for me, and I probably would have liked to go running back, but I didn't feel strongly about the next few running backs that came off the board after Gibson. And then to match up Diggs with Allen, that felt like the right move. It didn't seem too early to take Allen, so I was really happy with that team as well. Don't need a quarterback, so I'll be adding a tight end in the next I don't know if I'll add a tight end this next 5 rounds, but really happy with where that one's going. So that's our summary of the first 5 rounds. So now we'll jump into round 6. We're going to do it a little different. We're just going to run through every pick that was made in that round, and then we're going to hit on some of the key points that we think are important to look at. So round 6. So the first pick was Jerry Jeudy, followed by Rondale Moore, followed by A.J. Dillon, followed by Devonta Smith, Jamar Jefferson, Deshaun Watson, Julio Jones, Tyler Lockett, Laviska Shenault, Tyler Boyd, Chuba Hubbard, and Dak Prescott. So this round had a lot of, since we last recorded, there's a lot of big news that actually impacts these players that were drafted in this round. So at 10 or at the 602, well, 603, we had AJ Dillon off the board. Today, as we already mentioned, Aaron Jones signed an extension. Thor, you got any thoughts on AJ Dillon in the 6th round? What are we doing about this now? What are we saying?
It's just inexplicable that an NFL team general manager was paid to select a player to make their team better, and they took AJ Dillon in the 2nd round when you have Aaron Jones, who's a free agent next year. And the idea is that you let AJ Dillon take over the next year, and then you go back and re-sign Aaron Jones. Just don't draft AJ Dillon. If you're going to re-sign Aaron Jones, just have a plan. Like, have your next few years mapped out. Like, Aaron Jones was who he was last year. You know, it doesn't make any sense. And
where would you draft him now, AJ Dillon? What round are we thinking about as the backup?
I think he's an 8-9. I think he's still like an 8-9-10 guy. You know, he's going to be a really high upside handcuff. My guess with Jamal Williams gone is that we'll still see him mixed in.
Yeah.
Games in a 5 to 10, or 6 to 12 touch range, and then as winter rolls around, I think LaFleur will use him like he tried to use Derrick Henry in Tennessee, and we saw glimpses of that last year too. And but the upside, isn't really there for a round 6 selection anymore. I don't think. I'd rather have Devonta Smith or Julio or Lockett. I'd rather have a lot of these other guys. But Jones has been fragile too during his career, and if Jones misses time, AJ Dillon's an automatic locked in RB1 every week if Jamal Williams is gone. So I don't hate the pick, but certainly not round 6 value at this point with Jones locked up for 4 more years.
That's a long time.
A long time.
Yeah, that outlasts the AJ Dillon contract, by the way. So Jones is in Green Bay for longer than AJ Dillon at this point. So
in terms of process, that might be the worst NFL move ever. Like the only party involved in the Aaron Jones contract that's good for is Aaron Jones. It doesn't really help the Packers at all.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's wild.
And Aaron Jones is clearly the superior player. I just don't understand how you don't have a plan in place. If you're not going to re-sign Aaron Jones, I get the Dillon draft pick, even though it was still dumb. But then you re-sign Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon's a backup. It's just dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we'll move on from AJ Dillon to Devonta Smith. Getting him as the 7th rookie off the board in the 3rd rookie wide receiver, this felt like a steal. He's gonna be either the number 1 or number 2 rookie wide receiver taken in the actual NFL draft. I don't care where he goes, that draft capital is going to matter. And he showed that he can play in college. So he should be successful on any team that he goes to. So I was really happy with him at that point. I think he's going to be successful. And to add him to my other young receivers, that felt like a great value pick there. Thor, you took Deshaun Watson in the 6th round to pair with your young wide receiver team. What are we thinking about Watson? Are we worried he's gone, going to stay, going to hold out? What are we thinking?
I'm hoping they end up moving on from him. From what I've read, if Watson doesn't play this year or whatever, his contract doesn't toll, and he would just be sitting on the roster for another additional year. So the contract would just roll back another year.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He wouldn't get paid, so there's obviously two sides to it, but I would think that Houston would want to trade him and start rebuilding. I mean, the team around him is just a joke at this point. So, get a couple firsts, get a few firsts, send him off to a team that can use him. And, I'm not worried about his fantasy value. I think he's in the same tier as Kyler and Josh Allen, for sure. And getting him a little bit later was nice. So I'm happy with it. And hopefully he gets moved to a situation that's a little more fantasy friendly than what the Texans probably would be this year.
Yeah. Speaking about paying quarterbacks, Dak Prescott, he's getting a nice payday, and he's on your first team that you liked and you thought was going to be in compete mode immediately. That obviously is still true through the 6 rounds with that Dak Prescott pick, but it's also locked up for the future a little longer now too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dak was, before his injury was either the QB1 or QB2 to that point. And, with CD coming on, Gallup, and Amari, it's still a pass-friendly scheme. I absolutely love having Dak here, especially on a team that I know can compete, with who I have on the roster. Can compete for a championship in year one. So I'm happy with Dak, who says he's going to be healthy by by the start of the season.
Yeah, Foz, I know you were really happy with one of your picks. Who is it you want to highlight here?
Yeah, Rondale Moore. I mean, I like him better than Devonta Smith in terms of like NFL prospect. I feel like Devonta Smith was kind of helped out by the Waddle injury. If Waddle, and that just funneled all the Alabama targets to Devonta Smith. And, Alabama's got the number 1 offensive line in the country. They have, the quarterback sits back there, finds the best, one of the best athletes in the country, and he does work. That's what Devonta Smith did. Rondale Moore, producing the way he produced as a true freshman in 2018 must have been, is like unheard of at Purdue, no less. Like, we're not talking about NFL talent everywhere here. We're talking about underdogs in every single game, playing against prime competition, every single game, like the Ohio States, Michigans, Penn States, Michigan State, Wisconsin. All right. There are at least 6 teams better every year than Purdue. And Rondale Moore goes out there at age 18. All right. I'm going to get the numbers for y'all because they're important. 148 targets, 114 catches, 1,258 yards, 12 touchdowns, 30% target share. 18 years old at Purdue. All right. Like, that is unheard of. He only played 7 games after that. This was a very shortened season this year, of course. I think Purdue actually had a couple games, canceled. But I can't wait to see his measurables because I'm sure he's going to measure in great in terms of like a slot receiver or a gadget player, like guy that you just got to get the ball in his hands and he'll make something happen. He's that guy. All right. And he did it against better competition with worse talent around him. So like, I was super happy to add Rondale Moore to this team at the turn here in round 6. I just feel like there's massive upside. Like, I can just picture Rondale Moore going to a place like San Francisco or the Rams or somewhere where some offensive mind is going to take him and use him to the fullest. All right. I wouldn't like Kansas City maybe at the end of round 1. Who knows? Like, one man can dream, right? But I'm huge on Rondale Moore. Huge on Rondale Moore. Watch his game against Ohio State in 2018 and tell me you don't want that guy on your team.
Can't argue. He seems like he's going to succeed at all levels in the passing game too. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
So that concludes our round 6. All right. So now we'll move on to round 7 to see how the draft fell out after that. All right. So round 7, the picks went Will Fuller, Kenny Gainwell, Jalen Waddle, Adam Thielen, TJ Hockenson, Ronald Jones, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Deebo Samuel, Noah Fant, and Damian Harris. So one thing that jumps out immediately looking at that to me is that we have 3 relatively young, solid tight ends that were drafted in that group. And it looks like I'm the only one that did not take a tight end in that round. So Foz, why Hockenson over Andrews? Or Fant, because it kind of feels like all 3 of these guys belong in the same tier. So why Hockenson first out of those guys?
I just think like that offense is so suited for like a 3 down, like all around tight end. And with the target vacation, like the vacating of the targets by Kenny G leaving in free agency, and with a for sure like slowed down offense, I think Hockenson is really the only pass catcher of value on that offense, the only pass catcher you want to have. Whereas when you look at the other 2 tight ends, when you look at Andrews, it's a low volume offense, and his usage was down this year, and he wasn't as efficient in the red zone. And then Fant has like a probably volatile quarterback situation with Drew Lock. Even though I don't hate Fant, I think Fant the player makes up for more of Lock's deficiencies than Andrews the player makes up for Lamar's deficiencies. If that makes sense. Like I don't think Andrews is much of like a player. I think he just succeeds when the situation around him is ideal. Whereas Fant, I feel like Fant can be like a elite tight end for a long time, regardless of who's throwing the football and regardless of his opportunity. But I would still take Hockenson over both of them just because of this special situation he's in Detroit, where they're going to have to throw the ball, and there's really no other targets there right now. And even if they do add someone, I feel like just with how Jared Goff will probably be managed and how much they want to run the ball, low volume for Hockenson kind of in that offense will be a plus for him. And like when they get down there, he'll be the guy that reaps the rewards. And the only reason him over Fant for me is just like Fant's it's a crowded situation. There was Sutton coming back and Judy and Hamler, and they want to run the ball over there too with Vic Fangio. So
yeah. Thor, do you have any comments about Mark Andrews? Like, would you have taken him over Hockenson, or were you going tight end that spot no matter what, pretty much, and going to take either of those 2? Or
Yeah, it just kind of worked out for me. I felt like there was a tier dropping, or we're kind of in a lower tier receiver spot I already had, and there was no running back here that I really liked either. So I did want to go tight end here for this team, but I kind of echo the same sentiment that Foz said. I think they're all in a similar tier. I do think Hawkinson's in the best short-term position to succeed in Detroit. That defense is falling apart, and Goff doesn't love to throw it deep, and there's really only Marvin Jones, and I'm sure they'll draft a guy or 2.
I don't think Jones is a free agent.
Right. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like Quintez Cephas.
Yeah,
he is the only wide receiver of consequence there, I would think right now. So
right. So really good situation. I think, like Foz said, I don't really see much more upside from what we've seen from Andrews. I do think he'll be fine. I don't think he'll get hurt if the Ravens bring in somebody else, which they should. I think his situation might actually improve a little bit. But I just think what we saw 2 years ago with the Ravens isn't really what the Ravens offense will look like going forward. I think it'll be somewhere in between last year and that other year, which is fine. He's going to be a top 5 tight end, but I think there'll be a lot of weeks where you're left holding the bag, just with the way the offense functions. And Hockenson, you're going to get 5 to 8 targets minimum every week, and red zone usage. And then, like Foz said, Fant, really like him, really like the talent, really like the player, a really good athlete, but crowded receiving group and no quarterback. That's a problem.
That's a problem. Definitely a problem. So we already talked about one of the guys that I drafted, Jalen Waddle. He came up when we were talking about Devonta Smith. I love Waddle. His tape is electric. His special teams alone are going to get him to be involved weekly. And he has the potential to return a punt every week. If they give him, if he gets the ball in a decent spot, he can take it to the house. He's gonna have a punt return for a touchdown this season. Like, it's almost a guarantee. Maybe not a guarantee, but
That's a little bullish there.
I would not be shocked if he does in his rookie year, if he has a touchdown on a punt return or kick return. I'm really excited to add him to that team that I got him on. He's my 4th wide receiver, so I don't need him to play every week. But he's that super high upside player.
Yeah, I think one thing to point out with him too that's kind of funny is that he outproduced Devonta Smith in 2018 as he was a freshman too. Devonta was a sophomore, so another little check mark for Waddle there.
Yeah, he checks all the boxes. He's going to be successful, and he's going to make a team and be put on the active roster every week. So let's see who else we got. Oh, Ronald Jones, another one of my picks. He had an up and down year. Leonard Fournette, will he be gone? Brady just restructured, and there's a lot of free cap. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing. It seems like they want to bring everyone back. I don't know. I'm hoping that they're going to bring in another running back, but Jones seemed to show that he can play. He had some downsides too. There is that, but he could be their running back plan. That wouldn't surprise me. So we'll see. Not exactly sure, but as my 3rd running back on that team, it felt fine to do that.
Would you have drafted Gainwell if he was there?
I'm not a huge fan of Gainwell. I don't think he is going to be the workhorse back that I wanted on that team. Not that Jones is that workhorse back, but that might be the plan in Tampa, to have him be the workhorse back or get the majority of the touches. Maybe not a workhorse, but I think the jury's still out on him. I'm not sure, to be honest, on Jones, but I like to hold a little bit of faith in him. So, all right, a little later in the draft.
It's a high floor guy for sure.
Yeah, I think Ronald Jones as a runner was like pretty darn good last year. Even if it's not Tampa Bay, like he could land somewhere where he has a good role.
Yeah, he did have a couple bad drops, and Brady does not like when that happens. So that's the only thing that I'm concerned about, is his involvement in the passing game. But until they bring in someone else, Jones is a safe play. Later in the round, we had a couple running or receivers that I am intrigued by. Marquise Brown and Deebo Samuel both seem like really high upside players that offer a somewhat safe floor. Marquise Brown not quite as safe as Deebo, in my opinion. But Thor, do you got any thoughts on those two? And would you have taken Marquise if he fell, if I had taken Deebo? Or
I probably would have taken Marquise, I think. But no, you know what? I wouldn't have. Yeah, I'm just not a Marquise guy. I just don't really see it. I get he's got a role. He just hasn't really done it, and it's been 2 years, and he's just not really producing very much in a situation. Yeah.
You know who Marquise Brown is to me? He's Ted Ginn Jr. Like, that's just this burner who's just like never gonna mix it up with the defense ever. Never like go over the middle and make a tough catch or anything like that. He's gonna just catch the long ones, get a bunch of gash gains every now and then, but he's never gonna be reliable for you unless it's like literally the perfect situation.
Right. And that's the kind of team that John 3 is the only kind of team that I think you can draft Marquise Brown on, where
Agreed.
He is your 5th or 6th wide receiver, and you're not going to need him every week to be there. You just are going to need him for bye weeks or injury fill-ins, or if you're a super projected underdog and just need a 2-touchdown, 180-yard game. That's in the range of outcomes for Marquise Brown. But then you're going to have the game where he drops 2 of his targets and doesn't have any receptions and no yards, and maybe he rushes the ball for 5 yards. That's also in the range of outcomes with Marquise Brown. So there's the risk. So you need to make sure that you're in a spot that you can sustain that risk.
He's just not a number one receiver. Like, it's just not who he is.
Right. And they're going to bring someone in. They're going to bring someone in this draft to compete with that wide receiver 1 position.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and just more on those two too. Like, if you look at where I am, that Foz 3 pick, I picked Rashad Bateman over them too, very comfortably, like very, very comfortably. When you have a guy like Bateman who's a rookie, doesn't matter where he goes, like he's going to have another guy in the Big Ten playing against better competition every single week and just dominating them year in and year, for 3 years over there, like crazy at Minnesota.
Yeah, but I do think though I do really like Deebo here and was happy you picked Brown, but I think he's being pushed aside a little bit with the Ayuk breakout. But Deebo, he hurt his foot in the offseason and I believe was out for the first half of the year and then came back and never really got it going again. But he had an 800-yard, 6-touchdown season as a rookie. And I know he's not a traditional downfield playmaker. But he's amazing with the ball in his hands, and that's what Shanahan likes to do. I think Ayuk probably plays more of the downfield role, like the guys like Pierre Garçon have for him in years past. But Ayuk will still get plenty of targets, and as long as they have a competent quarterback, I don't see why Deebo wouldn't produce. Especially at a young age, wouldn't produce wide receiver 3-4 numbers at a as a floor, to be honest. And now he was a wide receiver 2-3 as a rookie.
Right. And another thing with Deebo on your team, you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be fun. You get to watch him have electric plays almost on a weekly basis when he's on the field. So he's a fun guy to have on your team. And there's
when he's playing.
When he's playing.
Yeah, yes. When he's on the field is the operative phrase there.
Yes, okay. When he is on the field, you will have fun watching.
He only missed 1 game his first season, and then obviously the foot injury year 2.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the end of round 7. Either of you guys want to talk about anyone else in there at all, or jump into round 8?
I just got something about Kenny G or Kenny Gainwell. I should be more specific. There's a lot of Kenny G's in fantasy football this in our lives. Watching his tape, I know he's probably not going to be like a between the tackles, like every down back, but like at Memphis, his situation could literally not have been worse. That might have been the worst offensive line at any level I've ever watched. In my high school team, in 1-10 last year, like it was bad. So I think no matter like where he lands in the NFL, he's going to have a chance to succeed. He is athletic. He does have some talent, and I think he'll have a lot more lanes to run in. When he's behind the QB and when he's, running routes.
Yeah. And to your point, about Memphis, he was a player too, that in his sophomore year, he was the primary running back there. Like he touched the ball, I believe 250, 300 times.
Yep. Over Antonio Gibson.
Right. Which is saying something. And, when you're going after these rookie running backs who are a little, ambiguous, you want guys that, have had that history of being a college workhorse. You don't want somebody that, even it's hard to see Gainwell being a workhorse at the pro level at his size, but just because he has done it in college, it improves his NFL outlook because NFL teams may look to use him like that, similar to like a Dion Lewis or Chase Edmonds, Aaron Jones.
Yeah, and that was an O-line behind an O-line that couldn't even block Temple or Tulane, like like terrible. So,
yeah. All right, so we'll jump into round 8 now. Wrong button there.
No,
too many times. All right, there we go. Round 8. Keyshawn Vaughn, Lamar Jackson, Chris Carson, Justin Herbert, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, Terrace Marshall, Curtis Samuel, Chase Edmonds, Dallas Goedert, Denzel Mims, Jarvis Landry. So right at the beginning of the draft, we had 2 quarterbacks come off the board, Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert. Pause. I'll let you defend the Lamar Jackson pick there. let you go
So
first.
it's just like rushing quarterbacks in fantasy are so valuable, and Lamar is obviously the most elite rushing option in the NFL right now. And that team obviously, like, I haven't drafted. I didn't have a quarterback in this startup from round 8. By round 8, and it felt like the time where having like a rushing upside QB with this team would be something that would work out. So you lock in Lamar Jackson every week. You're probably gonna your floor is probably 10 or 12 points just based on the rushing equity, and you hope he can connect in the red zone when they get down there. Still has the offensive coordinator Greg Roman that's going to run the ball and run the option. So even though Herbert was there too, there's definitely a lot of volatility on the Chargers coaching staff, and that offensive line is quickly becoming the worst in the NFL with Trey Turner being cut this week. So, I'm not really like Herbert's obviously talented, but there's a situation brewing in the Chargers where he could quickly be ruined with the coaches and no offensive line.
Yeah. So I'll just start off with, I would have taken Lamar Jackson over Herbert as well. I really wanted Jackson to make it to me. He didn't, but I knew I wanted to add a young quarterback here, and it kind of feels like Jackson and Herbert are in a tier of their own. In this draft, there hasn't been one for a round and a half almost. So it kind of feels like it to us right now that those guys would be in a tier of their own. I don't know if you guys agree with that, or if you would separate them, maybe move Jackson into the tier with the Watson and Prescott, or drop them both into a lower tier as the start of the next level.
I think I view Jackson slightly above Herbert. I think he's closer to that, Watson, Prescott, Allen tier.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I agree with
Herbert. I think is just a step or two below, but not by a lot.
Right. So you guys you're saying that Herbert probably was a little bit of a reach by the fact that he was taken here, or Lamar was a really good value at falling to this point, which I'd argue it's the second, because like Foz was saying, the 8th round feels like a really good spot to get a quarterback of this caliber.
I agree.
Yeah, that's the correct take, I think.
Yeah.
And even after Herbert, I feel like Herbert might even be like a tier of his own right there, because like when you get after Herbert, you're starting talking about like Tannehill and Hurts and quarterbacks like that. Where I would take Herbert over all those guys.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, this is the end of those high end young quarterbacks that have proven they can do it.
Right.
And then we're going to move into the older ones a little bit later. So, all right. So then we had, towards the end of the round, we went Curtis Samuel, Denzel Mims, and Jarvis Landry. These guys all kind of seem similar, where they're in kind of ambiguous situations. We're not really sure necessarily who their quarterbacks are going to be even, or whether they're going to be the focal point of their offense, what team they're going to be on. So I just want to hear some thoughts on those guys. So Foz, you drafted Mims and Samuel on 2 different teams. Are they right next to each other in your opinion, or should they be a little further apart? How do you feel about those guys?
They're pretty close. I feel like the Samuel pick was more based on my team structure at that point. With Higgins, Beckham, and Lockett, I feel like I have some like really elite fantasy receivers that could all three could conceivably finish in the top 12. And I feel like Samuel gives me a high floor with some upside depending on his landing spot. So I feel like it was just like a solid wide receiver pick to like shore up that position in a league where you can start 5 receivers in a given week.
Right.
Mims I'm pretty high on. And I feel like right there, like when I was making this pick, Landry was never even a consideration. I don't even consider Landry to be even close to Mims and Samuel in a dynasty startup. Like on your show sheet, it said upside for Landry, and I just don't. Those things are like oxymorons for me in fantasy football. Like Jarvis Landry is like the most opposite upside wide receiver of all time.
He's a wide receiver
So like everyone,
every year.
Yeah. So upside might not have been the word, but
yeah, true.
So the other two,
well,
Mims and Samuel have the upside, but that bring them above Landry's floor.
yes, for sure. And like even with Mims, like Mims is going to see in the NFL. Like I feel like that we're talking positive coaching changes. Isn't it like LaFleur? Isn't the OC that went with Saleh LaFleur's brother? Am I getting that right, or am I confusing that? Like, so there's like even if Darnold's still the quarterback, I still think Mims can make a good year 2 little bump. And then if they move on from Darnold and bring in, Justin Fields, now we're talking. So I like the Mims pick there, even with his quarterback volatility, because I feel like that organization is moving slowly in the right direction with hiring Saleh, who's just a guy that knows how to coach football and gets his guys to play for him. And like with everything that is said about him from the San Francisco operation there, and with how long he's been with Kyle Shanahan, I feel like he'll know what he wants his offense to be. He's not just one of these run the damn ball defensive coordinators who don't know offense. I feel like because of his time with Shanahan, like they'll figure out the offense pretty quickly in New York.
Yeah. Thor, do you want to talk about Landry? I know you had some stuff on him.
Yeah, I just he's just someone that I feel is perennially undervalued, and he was, I don't know if you guys remember, but he was dealing with coming off hip surgery a lot of the early portion of last year, and he kind of started slow, and then as the season progressed, he was really, really strong, especially down the stretch into the fantasy playoffs. I agree. In a vacuum, like if you're looking at Mims, Samuel, and Landry all together, Mims and Samuel have the higher ceilings. Samuel's very dynamic. Mims is big, has speed, but both of their situations are murky. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the Jets. Mims hasn't really done it. He's shown some flashes, but we haven't really seen that much from him. He was a good prospect. There was some draft capital spent there, but we have a lot of value and knowledge that Jarvis Landry's a very good football player, and he'll be a wide receiver 3 probably at worst. I think, for your team, Foz, it made sense to go those guys. But for my team, where I had Thomas and Chase, who may not be, locked in wide receiver 1s, I wanted to have some depth and strength and backup strength there at wide receiver with Fuller and Landry, have that veteran presence behind Chase especially, and hopefully, Thomas doesn't fall down with Taysom Hill or whatever, Jameis.
So Thor, you mentioned Chase on Thor 2. You drafted Chase Edmonds. Since you drafted him, we've heard some news or coach speak. How are you feeling about that?
I actually didn't see the coach speak. What did they say?
They are confident that Chase can handle the load.
That's big news. I've always been a big Chase Edmonds guy. He gives me like the Aaron Jones vibe, like undersized, came from a small school where he was like a workhorse for a number of years. And he hasn't really had a chance to like be the guy in the NFL, but when he does get opportunities, he's good. He was efficient and good as a pass catcher. I remember last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, he had that game against the Giants where he was the starter. I think it was last year, and he ran for like 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then he had another game where he was kind of like meh, didn't really do much as the starter with Drake out. But I think he's a great pass catcher, and it's a situation where he does get targets in the passing game, and he's big enough to shoulder that load clearly. And if they give him the opportunity, he's going to be in a regular redraft league. If he's the starter going into the year, he'll be a first, second, third round pick, like without question.
Yeah.
And I'll be happily taking him there because I believe in the talent, and it's a great offense to be a part of.
Yeah.
The offensive line's bad, but the usage will make up for that. I'm not worried, and I believe in the player.
Yeah. I echo all of that.
Chase Edmonds is a vibe for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I'm going to just jump into round 9. I don't think there's anything else really that jumps out aside from, I guess Dallas Goedert. I was really happy he was still around after that little mini tight end run. I wasn't sure if someone would jump on him a little earlier than this. So I was really happy to have him fall here, especially with the Zach Ertz situation deteriorating every day. It seems like seems like he has played his last game in Philadelphia. So Dallas Goedert is on a pass or on an offense that likes their tight ends. So really happy to have him there. All right, so now round 9. So this round we started with Michael Gallup, Michael Pittman, Brandin Cooks, Hunter Henry, Naheem Hines, Robbie Anderson, Jalen Reagor, Elijah Moore, Raheem Mostert, Christian Kirk, Tony Pollard, and Zach Moss. So we obviously started with a couple young wide receivers that are in pretty good situations or improved situations from last year. Maybe not Gallup. His situation hasn't really changed all that much. But we do know Dak is locked in, so it can't be worse. Pittman, is Wentz going to be a better quarterback? Probably. Hopefully.
I would say so. I think I made this pick before the Wentz news happened.
Yep.
I was very excited for Pittman when the Wentz news happened. I just feel, the only time we've seen Wentz succeed in the NFL was when Frank Reich was on the coaching staff. So there's like we said, I feel like we might have talked about this off air, but like if Wentz is going to succeed in the NFL again, this is his last shot and this is the perfect opportunity. And I tend to think he will, and Pittman will be like one of the benefactors of that. He showed last year like that he can be an NFL wide receiver. I feel like they'll throw more if they can, and they'll put themselves in positions to be efficient with their passing. And again, I believe in Pittman the player for like mostly, and then with the Wentz news and is just better. It's just good stuff. Like I was excited. I don't know. There's not much. I don't have much analysis for it. It's just like his quarterback situation is improving and he's a talented NFL player. Like why not? Especially looking around the receivers that were going that way in that time as well with Gallup and Cooks and Anderson. It's like Pittman may have the most upside of all three of them at this point.
Yeah,
at least in the short term.
I agree.
Definitely in the short term. So then we have 4 running backs with Hines, Mostert, Pollard, Moss. None of them are slated to be the starter, really. We have some high upside handcuffs, I'd say, in Pollard and even Zach Moss. I don't necessarily, not sure if he's a high upside, but if Singletary goes down, Moss will get the workload. And I think that situation's a bit of a mess. I think they're both very similar help to the team. So I'm not really sure how to feel about Moss going into this year, but I think he could be successful. I'm hoping he is.
Yeah, I think they like him a little more than Singletary, to be honest. And he's a better pass catcher. I know it seems like they want to split the load, but I think at worst case you have a kind of back end flex guy and potentially an RB1 too if Singletary were to miss time or leave for whatever reason.
Right. I think to remember last year too. I think Buffalo was like bottom third in like O-line, like rushing efficiency. So if they improve that through the draft, then Moss should look way better.
Yeah. So with these my picks for John 3 and John 4, I kind of felt similar where Mostert and Moss could be the running back 1 on their team depending on how things fall. And to get a running back 1 for their team in the 9th round was good value in my opinion, especially here. So I was happy to add those guys. Another guy I want to highlight in this round is Brandin Cooks. Throughout his career, he has only had 2 seasons that he has not eclipsed 1,000 yards. I don't see why that doesn't happen again with no other receivers in the room. Kiki QT, sure, he's there. And he'll have a more involved part of that passing game, but I don't think he takes enough yards away from Cooks to keep him under 1,000. And
Nice.
to have a 1,000-yard receiver as my wide receiver 5 on that team, that felt pretty good.
I will say his best years may be behind him.
his best years are definitely behind him, but this team doesn't need him to stay around for that much longer.
Right. If Watson stays, then Cooks is definitely a good value. I will just add the Cooks longevity point to the Cooks longevity point. No players ever played past 6 documented NFL concussions, and I believe he has 6 currently. And I know if we remember probably some of those hits that he took when he was on the Patriots. He took some really bad hits.
Oh yeah, the one in the Super Bowl may not have been diagnosed, but that absolutely was one.
Yeah,
100%.
And we've been talking about the concussion issues with Cooks for years, so
I know
it's going to catch up. It has to. Jordan Reed's got to be close to that number, though, doesn't he?
He might be the one player that went past it. Actually, I think he's the first player to.
Did he get one last year, Reed? I don't remember. I know he got injured.
Nah, I think he had like a foot or something.
Okay.
And that might have been an earlier injury in his career. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on any of these guys that went in the 9th round?
Yeah, I just have one thing on Hines. I feel like Hines is being slept on a little bit. Like even last year with Jonathan Taylor, Hines still saw the 3rd most running back targets and the 3rd most running back receptions, and had the 3rd most running back receiving yards. So like he's going to be, the pass catching 3rd down option, and then you might even get some red zone looks too, and find the end zone a few times. 16th in red zone touches last year. So 9th round, I feel like it's great value. Great high floor mid round dynasty startup guy to get.
Yep. Especially on that team where you have 3 solid starters.
Oh yeah, that team, especially like that Foz 2 team with Nyheim Hines looks so good. Like that was the pick when I made it. I was like, all right, this Foz 2 team's coming together real nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also add that I know I made the pick, but I really like the Christian Kirk pick. I think he's a really, really good player that was a victim of Kyler Murray's kind of down second half of the season with his shoulder injury. I think as Hopkins settles in a little more in year 2 and Kirk and Kyler are healthy, he could easily be a wide receiver 2, 3. And he's still really young, had a really, really strong college profile. And I don't think he's someone that should be forgotten. I think he belongs in just beyond the I think he belongs in the Landry, Mims, Fuller tier, to be honest.
So this is the last year of his deal unless they use the 5th-year option, or he wasn't a 1st round pick, was he? No, he was not. 2nd round, 47th. So he's in the last year of his deal. So he might not be on that team next year. And that might not be a bad thing for a guy like him.
No. I'll say one thing too on Elijah Moore, just real quick. He's like the last rookie wide receiver of like that tier. So like if you haven't drafted a rookie wide receiver and Elijah Moore goes, you're in trouble.
All right. So let's we'll start into round 10. So we started Henry Ruggs, Gabriel Davis, Rashad Penny, David Johnson, Kenyan Drake, Marlon Mack, Russell Wilson, KJ Hamler, Devin Singletary, Joe Burrow, Michael Carter, Alexander Madison. Seems like right in the middle, we have some older running backs that are coming off injuries, coming off of not great years, just really unsure of how things are going to go in the future. Thor, you want to talk about Marlon Mack?
Yeah. We don't know where he'll be. I believe he's an unrestricted free agent. But Marlon Mack has proven that he's a capable and talented running back in the NFL at an NFL level. And he's a good pass catcher. He was a good pass catcher in college, although hasn't been extremely used in that way in the NFL. So it's just he's very landing spot dependent. But at this point in the draft, I know I'm taking someone that has juice, and he's still young, and he could go somewhere where he's the backup to start. You could go somewhere like Seattle, for all we know, where he competes with Rashad Penny for the starting job. And it wouldn't be crazy to see, Mack end up with the starting job there. So I'm happy getting him here in, round 10. Whereas if this was 2 years ago, he was a round 6, 7 guy, before Taylor and his, Achilles injury.
Yeah.
Achilles, yeah.
Foz, what do you think about Drake, another unrestricted free agent entering the 2021 season?
Honestly, I don't think much about Kenyan Drake. But as my fifth running back and a guy who's like just a proven NFL runner, I know like running backs changing teams is like always, it's such a hard thing. Like, so I don't really expect much. That's why he's the fifth running back here on this team. And I don't have like any expectations. I hope it's like a lottery ticket scenario and he ends up in like San Francisco or something like a place like that, or like Seattle, a place that wants to run the ball and like,
yeah.
Because like other than that, if Drake doesn't end up there, we're gonna see, he's gonna be in a timeshare and he's gonna be the oldest guy in the timeshare, and that's not gonna turn out well.
Yeah, and I'll take my turn with David Johnson. When I made the pick, he was not extended. So the Texans have extended him. So he's on the team for at least one more year. Not a huge contract, but the Texans have no idea what they're doing. And I think they're going to I'm hoping they run the ball a ton with David Johnson, but I needed to add another chance at a running back one on this team, and David Johnson has that chance. So I was happy to have him here. Again, it's a 10th round running back. Anyone that's going to get playing time in the 10th round is a good or significant playing time from a 10th round pick is going to be worthy of the pick, in my opinion. An early pick that I really liked, Foz 4, you added Gabe Davis. What are you thinking now that John Brown is gone?
Yeah, I mean, he should take over that role, right? I mean, you have Diggs, who's the elite number one outside guy. You have Beasley, who's elite in slot, and then you have Davis as the field stretcher, who he was efficient last year. He was 11th in fantasy points per target and 7th in yards per reception, and that was on not a lot of opportunity. So if you increase his volume a bit, he should produce. And and one of my worries with the Buffalo Bills this year is, I feel like last year might have been like a ceiling year for the offense. I'm not saying they won't be like a good NFL team, but just in terms of production from like Allen and Diggs, like that's that might be their ceiling year, and that's fine. But with how efficient Davis is, just a little bit of uptick in volume, like makes him a breakout, and that's what you're looking for, like right here in round 10.
Yep.
And I was very happy to pick him over. Like, even if I wouldn't have drafted Ruggs over him. I probably would have. I'm trying to think, like maybe Christian Kirk. I don't know, but it's close. It seems like the right spot for a guy like Gabriel Davis, though, and I was happy to draft him.
So I'll just defend my Ruggs pick. I don't really like Ruggs better than Davis, but that team already had Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, so I really didn't want to handcuff myself too much and be reliant on the Bills. And I have Zach Moss. So I already have too many Bills on that team. So I couldn't take Davis. If I had known he was going to be there when I made the Vaughn pick, I probably would have gone a different direction. I probably would have gone with like a Chris Carson or someone else. But Davis, I think I think he could have a top 24, top 30 2021 season fantasy wise. I think he's in line for a real breakout. So I was really like torn at that spot.
I for sure agree. I just want to reiterate that if I had known that Brown was going to get cut, I think I would have taken Gabe Davis over Kirk. The level of efficiency he showed, playing with Allen last year, and they're going to keep being really pass heavy. That's just how they're going to operate. Clearly, it's really, really encouraging.
Yeah, fully agree. All right, so then my next two picks, John 2 and John 1, I took Russell Wilson and Joe Burrow. Wilson, I think he's just constantly going to succeed at the NFL, in the NFL, no matter what team he's on. I'm hoping it's the Seahawks. I hope they can work out whatever's going on there, because that DK Metcalf and Lockett, if he can just keep having those guys to throw the ball to, he's just going to keep doing it and produce at a high level ever for the next few years. So really happy with that. So that team is in a compete now mode still. I'm really happy with where that John 2 is. John 1 to Joe Burrow. I think he'll start the year. Not sure. He got hurt a few weeks into the year, so that normally takes close to a year for the recovery. So with the limited off-season work, if any, real reps, I'm a little nervous. So I'll definitely need to add another quarterback to that team as we move forward in the draft, someone that can play and is a starter for this year at least, so that I have a starter on the team. But I was happy to get him. He's young, should do well, and I have Tyler Boyd on that team. So another, I like to correlate my receivers and quarterbacks in most of my teams if I can. So that's my thoughts on those two picks. Anyone have any other thoughts on any of the guys they picked, or want to say something?
No,
I'm just. Oh, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Thor.
I was just going to say at this point in the draft, I think we all made some good picks here with the running backs we took. Madison, Carter. I kind of hate my Singletary pick actually, but Mack, Drake, Johnson, Penny, all of these guys could have stints as very viable starting running backs, this season or in the next couple of years. Probably not this, next couple of years for Drake or Johnson, but at this point in the draft, you want to take running backs that have that kind of upside. You don't want to be drafting satellite backs, even if they might seem like they have a little bit more value. I'm 100% on the team of draft guys that if Dalvin Cook misses a few weeks, that Madison will be an RB1 too, and that can be said for I think a lot of the guys that we took here. Ahead of some scat backs or smaller running backs that you'll see start coming up, like a James White, for example.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And especially like Rashad Penny, we don't know what Seattle's going to do. He could be their plan.
Right.
So perfect kind of guy to be picking in mid to late rounds.
Yeah, and I feel like Michael Carter could be one of these like mid, like in your rookie drafts, like your mid-second round pick that like works out really well for you. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons the last 2 years at North Carolina. He's never had lower than, he doesn't have like a ton of targets, but he hasn't had less than 17 his entire career, and that was in his freshman year. He followed that up with 28 targets, 25 targets, and 30 targets. So they were utilizing the pass game, and that is with another like elite NFL running back on the roster with him down there in North Carolina. So like he can produce in a crowded backfield, and he's another guy that should succeed, that should return a lot of value in your drafts.
Agreed.
And the fact that Javonte Williams was on that team with him is going to make him slip in your rookie rankings, because he was not overshadowed, but Javonte Williams is the shiny object. So people aren't necessarily looking at Michael Carter as much. So there's value in that mid-second round on Carter if he can fall there. So yeah, so that finishes off our first 10 rounds of the draft. It looks like all of our teams are shaping up pretty nicely. We have a couple that are clearly trying to win this year. We have a couple that are really young, and with good players still, because we're still in the top 10 rounds. So everyone that's getting drafted here is good. But we have some good young players, some good young teams, and some teams that are just really off to a hot start. So it'll be interesting to see how we all finish off our teams over the next 10 or so rounds. And then we'll get into some sleeper stuff at the end, I think. But we'll cross that bridge as we get going. But I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks or anything you want to say, or if we wanted to sign off.
I'm good to go. I feel good. I can't wait to get picking on the text.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Well, so this is the conclusion of episode 2 of the Dynasty Boardroom, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and let us know what you think.